Hello, welcome back. I'm Catriona Morten. I'm a sensory motor psychotherapist. Today I want to talk to you about EMDR, which stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing. EMDR is a really effective treatment for any aspect of trauma, whether it's flashbacks, whether it's intrusive smells, intrusive thoughts, memories, really strong reactions to things when our nervous system gets triggered. What EMDR does is it replicates the natural processing that we do when we're asleep. In particular, when we're in the REM part of sleep, rapid eye movement, which is where the eye movement bit comes in with the EMDR. When we're asleep in the REM phase of our sleep, our eyes flash really fast inside our eyelids, and a lot of the research that's been done shows that actually what you're doing is you're accessing your left and right hemispheres really quickly. And it's when we dream, we have images of things, and we dream about anything that's really happened that's impacted on us that day. It kind of clears out our system so that we don't carry everything over unfinished to the next day. It works incredibly well. Sometimes we remember our dreams and sometimes we don't. It doesn't matter. The processing goes on. When it comes to trauma, it gets stored in a part of your brain called the amygdala, which is the smoke detector. It's the place that all the traumatic memories are held. And it's a bit of a sealed unit, your amygdala, because nothing in there that's connected with trauma can't fade. It has no chronology, so everything remains as fresh and as clear and as disturbing as the day it went in there. It gets stored really jumbly as well. Timelines are really hard to kind of put together when we've had trauma, because everything just gets stored as it impacts on us. Because it doesn't fade, it means that the traumatic experiences we've had, whether they've been 15 years ago or 25 years ago, when they get triggered, they feel as real. People get really upset, they get really frightened. Sometimes they get frozen or get a flight response or a freeze response. So we know that those things aren't going away. They should have faded way back by now. If they haven't, then it means that they need a bit of processing. EMDR is such an effective way of doing that, because unlike when you're asleep, you're not consciously awake, and we've got no access to the amygdala and the traumatic memories that are in the amygdala. So when we do EMDR, we replicate the REM phase of sleep using whatever stimulates left and right hemispheres of the brain, and in a pattern, because it's thought that the rhythm of that is really important as well. And so we've got one foot in the present. We're awake, we can see what's going on. The therapist is talking to the person, saying, this is what's happening right now, you can hear my voice. Whatever's coming up for you is coming up in the past. So we have present moment experience, and we then can bring up some of the aspects of the trauma. The way that traumas seem to store themselves is in chains of things, which is really good, because it means that if we've had 5 years of really traumatic experiences, we don't have to do each one of them. They're linked in, and your brain knows what it needs to do to process. And so we give it a starting point, and then we process. And we do that either by bilateral stimulation of the eyes, which is looking really quickly from one side to the other, and give somebody something to follow. It can be a light, it can be a pen, it can be fingers that move rapidly, and the person will follow those things, keeping their head very still. We can use sound, we can use ear beeps. It stimulates using headphones. We can use touch, either buzzers in the hands or tapping. Touch. And it's getting the rhythm going, and it's getting the bilateral stimulation while you're in the present moment, but you're having the traumatic memory. And for some people, they feel it in their body and nothing comes to mind, or it's very vivid images, or it can be all kinds of different sensory experiences. But we allow it to happen. We give it the means by which to do it, which is the bilateral stimulation, and the brain and the body know what to do. We just kind of sit back, set it off, and allow the processing to continue. For some people, when they first go into it, they're reliving it, they're kind of in that moment, which is how the flashbacks and the intrusive memories occur. It's like we're back there. As we begin to process, then those images start to change. Sometimes we are aware that now we're observing it from a distance. Oh, so you're watching it, what can you see? And people have the most amazing recall, and it can also help make sense of what happened because they're now observing it. And then what begins to happen is they either get further and further away, or the image that's coming up just gets harder to see, harder to pull up, and it just begins to fade. And we keep going back. It's like we'll have a starting point and we can do a bit of scoring of how disturbing it is, what elements they are, so that you know when you go back in. Okay, so we'll go back into the beginning and notice what comes up this time as you go through it. What people notice is it changes, but the impact of it starts to decrease. It just gets less and less. We've still got the memory. It doesn't wipe the memory, but it fades back to the age that it should be. So if it was 15 years ago, it can be hard to recall in the same way that if somebody was saying, oh, can you remember that thing that happened 15 years ago? You're like, oh, yeah, was it so and so? It's a bit kind of faded, it's incomplete. Memories shouldn't burn so brightly. And so using EMDR, we're able to process them and help them go back to where they should be. It's also really, really effective for phobias, because phobias are always connected to some traumatic, overwhelming event that just kind of imprints. We might not even be aware that it's had an impact at the time. And then it can just link itself to other events that happened immediately afterwards. If we've been bitten by a dog and it's been really traumatic, really painful, we might develop a dog phobia, but we know where that one's come from. Often with phobias, we haven't got a clue where they've come from. And when we use EMDR to deal with phobia, say it's a cat phobia, then we just begin with an image of a cat. Often what happens is as we allow the memories and the images to come up, we often get a better idea of what the origin of that would be, and it can be something that we wouldn't have thought of as highly consequential at all, but it forms itself into this kind of fusion of things that makes absolutely no sense, but whoa, it really sets our nervous system off. A phobia is very different to, oh, I don't like that. It really activates our nervous system. We might have a fight, flight or freeze response, or we just have a complete and utter aversion to this thing. We know it's out of context. So they're very, very effective ways of dealing with any form of trauma. It is fast. You know, people will see a difference in just one session, in a few sessions. Another thing that I love about EMDR is that I don't need to hear the story. I've treated so many people that I really didn't know what their story was. Say it's been a sexual assault. We don't want to go and have to talk about that and talk about the details of it. With EMDR, we don't need to, because the processing happens in there. We stop and we take breaks, and I'll say to people, what's coming up for you? And they can tell me as little or as much as they want to. Sometimes it helps them make sense to talk about what they've seen, but I don't need to know. That's not important for the processing. So it's a very respectful, a very private process that we go through. And I really get how daunting it must be. I'm going to go and relive and look at my trauma. But we only do it 1 or 2 times, and then it starts getting less and less very quickly, which is brilliant. It is like putting your foot on the gas and just going for it as much as you can to really help it process, because once you get over those awful bits and it starts to change and fade, suddenly we don't have this thing that we've been carrying around with us all our life. It can feel like it's just gone. There's nothing replaces it, it's just gone. Like people with dog phobia, I'll say, so, you know, when you're out and about this weekend, what was it like? Often the answer I get is, oh yeah, it was fine. I don't think there was any dogs around. Yes, there were. They just didn't impact you. You didn't notice it because it was just normal. Nothing replaces the trauma. It just goes, and we can just get on with our life, which is brilliant. So I hope that explains things and helps give you an understanding of what EMDR is, how it works, if it's right for you. So if you like this video, then give us a thumbs up, subscribe below, send us any questions you've got. We're always delighted to get them, and I hope it's been helpful. I'll see you again next time. Bye!